doing the ice. And it came up. We inside the building. See, both fights was inside the building. That's why nobody in there.
YNW Bortlen got called out on his snitching, and it got so bad hands got thrown. Melly's probably going to be locked up for good, and his fam ain't too happy about it. But was Bortlen's decision the only way out, or was this a revenge plot years in the making? Let's get into it. When keeping it real goes wrong, the courtroom was mad quiet when Judge Martin Fine was about to drop one of the most game-changing decisions in recent hip-hop history. No cap. On September 9th, 2025, just one day before his trial was supposed to pop off, YNW Bortlen accepted a plea deal that would forever change the whole vibe of one of rap's most watched murder cases. This move was about to send shockwaves through the culture that would reach way beyond that Broward County courthouse, potentially sealing the fate of his day one homie and co-defendant, YNW Melly. This was a far cry from what he was saying just months before.
There's nothing to snitch on. We're innocent. Zoe, say this with me.
Bortlen was talking that tough talk, claiming innocence and calling for unity, but that energy was about to shift real quick when them prosecutors started applying pressure. The confidence in his voice, that whole "we solid" mentality, all that was about to crumble when faced with the cold reality of Florida's ruthless justice system. To really understand how deep this situation got, we got to break down the whole web of relationships, street politics, and legal chess moves that led to this crucial moment. The story starts in G. Ford, Florida, a small hood where Jamal Maurice Demons, YNW Melly, and Cortland Malik, Henry YNW Bortlen were part of the YNW Young World, or Young New Wave hip-hop collective. This wasn't just some rap group they threw together for clout. This was real brotherhood forged in the struggle, coming up from poverty, gang politics, and shared dreams of making it out the trenches through hip-hop. The crew also included Anthony Yayusak Chaser Williams and Christopher YNW Juvie Thomas Jr., two young kings whose lives got cut short way too early on October 26, 2018. That night, after they finished laying down tracks in Fort Lauderdale, all four homies found themselves riding together in a Jeep, not knowing this would be the last time they'd all be breathing in the same whip. Prosecutors are saying that Melly aired out the two victims inside the Jeep with Bortlen behind the wheel, and that they staged the whole crime scene to make it look like a drive-by. The plan, according to the state's version of events, was straight diabolical, but effective. Make it seem like their bros got caught slipping by some random street violence instead of the cold-blooded execution that prosecutors claim really went down. When Bortlen pulled up to Memorial Hospital Miramar at 4:35 a.m. with two bodies full of holes, he was painting a picture of pure terror and confusion. He claimed they had been victims of a drive-by, shooting a story that initially seemed believable given the violent environment these young dudes came from. But the forensics was about to expose a completely different narrative.
YNW Melly is accused of murdering his two close friends. They all were in a studio. They get in the car. In the front driver position was YNW Bortlen. According to prosecutors, Melly was seated behind the driver. On video, he's captured getting into the car behind the driver. What police knew afterwards is that Bortlen, the driver, showed up to the hospital with two dead bodies.
This breakdown shows how methodical the prosecution was building their case. The forensic evidence contradicted the drive-by narrative, showing that the fatal shots came from inside the vehicle, specifically from Melly's position. This revelation flipped the whole script from what looked like random street beef into something way more personal and sinister.
They asked him, what happened? He said, we got shot at. They can't find anything that showed there was a shooting there. No broken glass, no spent shells. They can't find any evidence. That becomes suspicious. It also becomes suspicious with certain things with his demeanor.
The bullets didn't come from ops sliding through in another whip. They came from someone sitting right next to the victim, someone they trusted enough to ride with after a long studio session. That's some Judas level betrayal right there. The charges that followed were heavy as hell, and life-changing Melly was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and aggravated assault, facing life in prison without parole or the death penalty under Florida's non-unanimous death penalty law. Meanwhile, Bortlen was initially charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of accessory after the fact witness tampering, conspiracy and gang-related offenses. The state's case looked solid on paper, but the complexities ran deeper than the surface evidence included. Surveillance footage, cell phone data, ballistics, and a shell. Casing found in the vehicle, though the defense questioned the legitimacy of some evidence. Alleging possible planting, the defense came back, swinging hard with Melly's team, claiming he acted in self-defense or was set up as part of a larger conspiracy, arguing the prosecution's case was full of holes and reasonable doubt.
When you shoot that thing, the bullet usually flies out to the left. Not only to the left, it usually flies out in close proximity of where the shooter would be. They found spent shells in the car. Now that defeated the entire theory that Bortlen told them that they got shot up by another car.
For Bortlen, the defense was running a different game but equally compelling his defense. Maintained he was unaware of Melly's actions, claiming he was focused on driving and avoiding being shot. During the incident, this painted a picture of a young dude caught up in some wild beyond his control, more of a victim of circumstances than a willing participant in some murder plot. The legal proceedings that followed were straight up dramatic and dragged out. Melly's first trial began in June 2023 but ended in a mistrial on July 22nd, 2023 after the jury deadlocked with a 9-3 vote favoring conviction on lesser manslaughter charges that hung jury was a major W for the defense, showing that reasonable doubt was real in the minds of several jurors who couldn't bring themselves to convict on those heavy first-degree murder charges. During this trial, the cracks in their friendship started showing in ways that would prove to be prophetic. During Melly's 2023 trial, his defense team pointed fingers at Bortlen, suggesting he could have been the shooter, a tactic described as creating reasonable doubt. This strategic move by Melly's legal team to potentially throw his day one under the bus would plant seeds of resentment that would eventually grow into the dramatic plea deal we witnessed in September 2025.
Because you already know Bortlen, he felt played once. YNW Melly lawyers, I'm trying to put all that shit on him. He felt disrespected, betrayed.
This analysis captures the emotional damage that legal strategy can inflict on personal relationships. When it's life or death, the bonds of brotherhood often become collateral damage in the fight for survival. The aftermath of the mistrial revealed fractures in what had once seemed like an unbreakable bond. Bortlen's cryptic tweet after the mistrial, "Mind games don't work on people like me," handshake emoji sparked speculation about tension with Melly or the prosecution. This seemingly harmless social media post would later be dissected by fans and legal observers as a potential warning, sign of the cooperation that was coming.
Then they watch Melly almost get a death penalty sentence. Then you sit back and hearing Thug situation. Like, damn, Thug done told. He said everything going on. He said how everybody get treated. Then you thinking about, like, if I risk all this, like, I get 2 life sentences and 70 years or whatever they were saying. Man, I'm not finna roll the dice with this bullet. Man, I'm finna go ahead.
The strategy seemed calculated and ruthless. Bortlen was arrested during a raid at his Miami home while on Bond A, dramatic flex that sent a clear message the state wasn't playing no games, and they were willing to turn up the pressure until somebody broke. This timing wasn't no coincidence. The prosecution understood that securing a conviction or cooperation from Bortlen could provide the missing pieces needed to ensure Melly's conviction in the retrial. They had learned from the first trials near Mississippi and were determined not to repeat the same mistakes. The plea deal that Bortlen ultimately accepted was both a strategic masterstroke and a potential violation of everything the street code represents. But to understand why this decision was so controversial and potentially damaging to his future, in the game we got to examine not just the legal implications, but the cultural and social consequences of what many in the hip-hop community would view as the ultimate betrayal of trust and loyalty when your day one becomes your worst enemy. The morning of September 9th, 2025 came with the weight of 6 years of legal battles, broken dreams, and a friendship that got tested way beyond its breaking point. As Cortland Henry prepared to step into that Broward County courtroom, he was facing a decision that would define not only his future, but potentially put the final nail in the coffin for the person he used to call his brother.
Bortlen took a plea agreement today. He's gonna get 10 years in prison, 6 years on like home confinement and like house arrest, and a lot more other stipulations and stuff like that. But that's all he's gonna have to do. Probably, I think, some of the time served and a whole bunch of stuff like that. So he's taking the deal. He didn't say Melly did.
The plea deal that Bortlen accepted was straight up unbelievable, and how sweet it was after facing The very real possibility of spending his whole life locked down he got offered a way out that would see him back on the streets in just a few years. The terms were almost too good to be true, a 10-year bid with credit for the approximately 4 or 5 years he already did, followed by 6 years of probation when Judge Fine broke down these potential sentences in court. The reality of what Bortlen was staring down became crystal clear. This wasn't just about avoiding some time. This was about dodging what was essentially a death sentence wrapped up in multiple life terms. The specific charges that got dropped as part of the deal tell the story of prosecutorial game playing and the power of plea bargaining. Bortlen pleaded no contest to 4 lesser charges: 2 counts of accessory after the fact to a capital felony, 1 count of witness tampering, and 1 count of unlawful use of a two-way communication device. In exchange, prosecutors dropped 2 counts of first-degree murder, 1 additional count of witness tampering, and a charge of directing the activities of a criminal gang.
He didn't point the fingers out, he didn't snitch, he didn't say anything like that, but a lot of people believe what he did is like what Gunna did to Young Thug.
But the most controversial part of the deal wasn't what Bortlen was avoiding. It was what he was agreeing to give up as part of the deal. Bortlen agreed to provide a sworn statement or prefer detailing his own role in the events of October 2018. This requirement would become the main source of snitching accusations and betrayal claims that would follow him for life.
It had been a dry snitch, and his snitch might have been even stronger. Melly saying he was never in the crime. Melly saying he didn't kill nobody.
The courtroom proceedings showed just how calculated this whole arrangement was.
Bortlen took a deal to say I was there. You know, I was there, this was my role in the murder, this was that and that. You know, that is hard to do and hard to say now because Melly is saying he was never there.
This statement by the judge was crucial because it seemed to protect Bortlen from whatever he might say in his profit. However, legal experts and street dudes alike understood that this distinction was basically meaningless in the real world. The information provided in a proffer, regardless of judicial protections, would inevitably become part of the prosecution's game plan against Melly.
It made it hard for the defense to say, you know, Melly didn't do this when this guy clearly took a deal and said, look, this is my part.
The reaction from legal observers was swift and pointed. Attorney John M. Phillips, representing YNW Sackchaser's family in a civil suit, stated on social media, as predicted, YW Bortlen took the plea deal. He also agreed to a profit, which means he's talking. Phillips suggested that Bortlen's testimony could be devastating to Melly's defense by filling gaps in the prosecution's case.
So, Mr. Henry, again, 2 cases. We're going to do one at a time. In case number 19, 1871 CF10A, as to count 3, accessory after the fact to murder in the first degree.
But Bortlen's legal team came back swinging, trying to protect their client's reputation and future safety. Bortlen's attorney Fred Haddad explicitly denied claims that Bortlen was cooperating against Melly, stating, "Let's be clear, my client is not snitching. There is no agreement to testify against anyone. The state wanted information about my client's involvement, and he provided that, nothing more."
In case number 23, 10643 CF10A, as to count 1, tampering with a witness in a capital felony, and count 7, unlawful use of a two-way communication device. How are you going to plead, sir? Guilty, not guilty, or no contest?
However, these legal technicalities and attorney statements couldn't overcome the optics of the situation or the harsh realities of hood culture. The hip-hop community, especially those who value keeping it real and adhering to the street code, saw through the legal double talk to what they perceived as the underlying truth. Bortlen had chosen saving his own skin over loyalty to his mans.
Boy, Bortlen just made Melly fell down to his knees when the lawyer came. Not the law, the lawyer came. The lawyer that came to Melly said and told him, man, your water, your round, your partner, your dog just took a plea.
The social media reaction was immediate, and brutal posts on X reflected a sentiment among some users that Bortlen's plea deal implied he was cooperating against Melly, with one user posting Bortlen is pleading guilty to helping Melly commit the murder of his 2 friends, while Melly is in court saying he didn't do it.
And he signed a proper, man, finna tell it all, man. Took them life sentence off the table. Yeah, man.
To understand why this reaction was so visceral, we got to examine the broader context of what constitutes acceptable behavior within hip-hop culture, particularly when it comes to dealing with the feds and law enforcement. The street code's prohibition on snitching is a cornerstone of urban and hip-hop culture, rooted in distrust of authorities and loyalty to one's community. This code isn't just some preference or suggestion. It's viewed as a fundamental principle that separates real ones from fake ones.
Number 19, 1871 CF10A, as to count 3 and count 4, I will adjudicate you guilty, sentence you to 10 years in Florida State Prison.
The historical context makes this reaction even more understandable. In many urban communities, particularly African American and marginalized groups, there's a long history of systemic abuse by police, and the judicial system cooperating with authorities is often seen as aligning with an oppressive force. This isn't simply about criminal culture, it's about survival community, protection, and maintaining dignity in the face of a system that many view as fundamentally hostile to their existence.
That will be followed by 6 years of reporting probation. I will impose mandatory court files. Pursuant to 943.325, I will need a set of your prints and DNA.
For Bortlen, the snitching accusations represented more than just criticism. They threatened to destroy everything he had, built and hoped to rebuild. If labeled a snitch, Bortlen risks being ostracized by peers in the rap and street communities, facing exclusion from social circles, events, or collaborations. The entertainment industry, despite its corporate facade, still operates according to many of these unwritten street rules, and artists perceived as violators of the code often find themselves professionally blackballed.
Probably paint that picture to him. Even if they don't use Bortlen information in that proffer for Melly case, it's still gonna weaken his defense. Ain't no way they ain't gonna hear what Bortlen.
The timing of Bortlen's decision also speaks to the psychological pressure. He had been under Bortlen, was released on bond in May 2020, and placed on house arrest while Melly remained in custody. This separation created completely different lived experiences for the two homies. While Melly was locked down fighting his case, from behind bars, Bortlen had tasted freedom and understood exactly what he stood to lose.
Don't use Bortlen information in that proffer for Melly case, it's still gonna weaken his defense. Ain't no way they ain't gonna hear what Bortlen said. They're gonna use it.
The contrast in their situations became even more stark as time progressed. In August 2025, Melly replaced his legal team with Drew Finley, NBA, young boy's attorney, signaling a strategic shift after 2387 days in custody. Without a sentence, meanwhile, Bortlen was looking at a trial date that could result in him joining Melly in a permanent residence behind bars.
Man, they'll put it like, it ain't gonna work against him, it work against Melly. Cook, you done.
But perhaps the most damaging aspect of the entire situation was how it exposed the fractures that had been developing in their relationship since the original incident. Court documents noted that Melly refused to testify against Bortlen in 2020, suggesting loyalty at the time, despite the state's efforts to pressure Bortlen to cooperate. This detail makes Bortlen's eventual plea deal even more painful. Melly had protected him when he had the chance, but when the tables turned, Bortlen chose a different path. The logical toll of these decisions can't be understated. Both young dudes had watched their dreams of hip-hop stardom evaporate in the legal system's meat grinder. They had seen their bros buried, their collective disbanded, and their futures reduced to a series of court dates and legal motions. In this context, Bortlen's decision to accept the plea deal becomes less about betrayal and more about the simple human desire to survive and eventually rebuild some kind of life outside them walls. However, understanding the motivations behind the decision doesn't diminish its potential consequences. As news of the plea deal spread throughout the hip-hop community, the question wasn't whether Bortlen had made the right choice for himself. It was whether he had made a choice that would allow him to live with himself, and more importantly, whether the streets would allow him to live at all. The price of freedom. The reverberations of YNW Bortlen's plea deal extended far beyond the sterile confines of the Broward County Courthouse, sending shockwaves through a hip-hop community already fractured by similar betrayals and broken codes. As the dust settled on September 9, 2025, the full magnitude of what Cortland Henry had potentially sacrificed in exchange for his freedom began to crystallize. This wasn't just about avoiding prison time. This was about the complete restructuring of his identity, his future prospects, and his place within a culture that values loyalty above almost everything else. The immediate legal ramifications for YNW Melly were stark and potentially devastating. The prosecution's case against Melly has been described as weak, relying heavily on circumstantial evidence as seen in the 2023 mistrial, where the jury deadlocked. However, Bortlen's proffer could fundamentally alter this dynamic by providing the missing narrative threads that prosecutors needed to weave together a compelling case for conviction.
Even if they don't use Bortlen information in that proffer for Melly case, it's still gonna weaken his defense. Ain't no way they ain't gonna hear what Bortlen said. they're gonna use it against him.
This analysis cuts to the heart of why plea deals and co-defendant cases are so controversial, even with judicial protections. An attorney denials the very act of providing information to prosecutors in a proper session creates potential ammunition that can be used in ways that may not constitute direct testimony but still damage the remaining defendant's case. The psychological impact on Melly cannot be understated. After 2387 days in custody without a sentence, watching his childhood friend and co-defendant walk away with a deal that could see him free in a matter of years must feel like the ultimate betrayal. The young man who once posted on Instagram expressing love for his YNW family and referring to Bortlen as his brother, now faced the reality that this same brother had chosen survival over solidarity. Implications extend far beyond the immediate legal case. For Bortlen, the plea deal represents a Faustian bargain that may have purchased his physical freedom at the cost of his cultural credibility and future prospects within the very industry that made him relevant in the first place. Bortlen's career prospects face significant challenges as artists. Perceived as snitches, often face boycotts from peers who value street credibility and may avoid working with him to protect their own reputations. The hip-hop industry, despite its corporate structure, still operates according to street rules in many ways, and artists who violate these codes often find themselves professionally ostracized. The parallels to other recent cases are instructive and ominous. The case parallels others in hip-hop where snitching allegations have impacted credibility, such as Gunner's plea deal in the YSL Rico case, which led to widespread accusations of snitching despite his insistence that he did not cooperate against Young Thug. Even artists who maintain some commercial success after such allegations often find their street credibility permanently damaged, limiting their ability to project the authenticity that is crucial to certain segments of the hip-hop audience. For Bortlen, the challenges are even more daunting than those faced by more established artists like Gunana. His limited discography and incarceration until at least 2028 further hinder his ability to rebuild his brand. Unlike artists with extensive catalogs and established fan bases, Bortlen's musical identity was still developing when the legal troubles began, leaving him without the commercial foundation necessary to weather this type of controversy. The safety implications are perhaps even more serious than the career concerns. Reddit users have speculated that Bortlen would need to leave Florida and live low-key to avoid retaliation or stigma, indicating the severity of potential social consequences. This isn't hyperbole. The street code's enforcement mechanisms can be swift and unforgiving, particularly for high-profile violations. The attorney for YNW Juvie's family expressed concerns for Bortlen's safety post plea, requesting a deposition within 30 days. Due to these risks, this urgent timeline suggests that even legal professionals understand the potential dangers that Bortlen now faces. From those who view his cooperation as an unforgivable betrayal, the broader cultural implications of this case extend into the ongoing debate about the toxicity of street code enforcement. In hip-hop culture, the YNW case highlights the tension between legal strategy and street culture, where taking a plea deal is often a pragmatic choice to avoid life imprisonment, but street culture rarely acknowledges this nuance, viewing any cooperation as a violation of the code. This creates what many scholars and observers have identified as a destructive double bind. Young people involved in the criminal justice system face an impossible choice: cooperate with authorities to secure a reasonable sentence and risk community ostracism and potential violence, or remain solid and face the prospect of spending their entire lives in prison. The system offers no reward for loyalty to the street code, but the streets offer no forgiveness for cooperation with the system.
Most rappers would do you like that. It ain't too many rappers that's gonna, take their charge when they bring in all this money per month and they change so many lives. In so many words, they let you know like their life more important than yours. You ain't no artist, you don't bring no real money on. You cause damage, so you take the fall.
This brutal assessment highlights one of the most troubling aspects of the rapper-associate dynamic that exists throughout hip-hop culture: the expectation that associates should sacrifice their freedom to protect the career of the more successful artist creates a system that is inherently exploitative and morally questionable. For Bortlen, this dynamic adds another layer of complexity to his decision. If the analysis is accurate, then Melly and his team may have always expected Bortlen to take the fall for the more talented and marketable artist. In this context, Bortlen's plea deal could be viewed not as a betrayal of friendship, but as a rejection of an exploitative system that would have consumed his life to preserve someone else's career. Long-term consequences for both young men are likely to be profound and lasting. Melly's retrial is postponed to January 2027, meaning he faces at least 2 more years of incarceration before his case is resolved. During this time, he will have to grapple with the knowledge that his former friend has provided information to the very prosecutors seeking to convict him. Meanwhile, Bortlen will spend the next several years in prison, knowing that his eventual release will be met with suspicion, hostility, and potential danger from those who view him as a traitor to the code that once bound him to his community. The snitch label is notoriously difficult to shake, and even if Bortlen's prefer does not implicate Melly, the lack of transparency in legal proceedings means the public may never fully accept his attorney's denial of snitching. The financial implications are also significant. Record labels prioritize marketability, and if Bortlen's fan base shrinks due to snitching allegations, labels may hesitate to invest in him, especially given his incarceration until at least 2028. The music industry, despite its rhetoric about artistic freedom and expression, remains fundamentally driven by profit margins and market appeal. Perhaps most tragically, the plea deal represents the final dissolution of what was once a genuine brotherhood born from shared struggle and common dreams. Their relationship, which was initially described as familial and tight-knit, rooted in their shared upbringing in a challenging environment marked by poverty and gang activity, has been completely destroyed by the legal system's pressure tactics. The YNW collective, which once represented hope and creative expression emerging from one of Florida's most challenging communities, has been reduced to a cautionary tale about loyalty, survival, and the impossible choices faced by young people caught in the intersection of street culture and the criminal justice system. As this saga continues to unfold, one thing remains certain. The reverberations of September 9th, 2025 will be felt for years to come. Whether Bortlen's gamble will ultimately prove worth the cost remains to be seen, but the price of his freedom has already been paid, not just in years of imprisonment, but in the destruction of relationships, reputation, and trust that may never be rebuilt. Thank you for watching this video. If you'd like to watch another fascinating video like this, click on one of the boxes on your screen right now.